Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
This is a deep dive into the answer to Quizzypedia Season 206, Question 12.
The category, Mountains and Volcanoes. The question, what is the name of the mountain range that extends along the Western Balkans, spanning countries like Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, and Albania? Known for its rugged terrain, dense forests, and deep canyons, this range is one of the most extensive in Europe.
And the answer?
The Dinaric Alps.
The Dinaric Alps.
Okay. Or sometimes called the Dinarids.
So why should we care about the Dinaric Alps? They might seem like just another mountain range on a map, but they hold a fascinating story, one that intertwines geology, ecology, and human history.
You're absolutely right. The Dinaric Alps are far more than just a geographical feature. They're a sprawling mountain range stretching over 645 kilometers, shaping the landscape and influencing the culture of the entire Balkan region. To understand their significance, we need to start with their formation. The Dinaric Alps were born during the Alpine orogeny.
The Alpine orogeny.
Yes.
For those of us who haven't spent much time studying tectonic plates.
Essentially, it was a period of intense mountain building that happened millions of years ago, the same event that created the Alps, hence the name. Imagine the Earth's crust colliding and buckling under immense pressure, pushing up these massive rock formations. That's how the Dinaric Alps came to be, forming a natural barrier between the Adriatic coast and the Balkan interior.
And this process, this Alpine orogeny, also gave the Dinaric Alps their distinctive karst topography. It's not just mountains we're talking about, is it?
No, it's much more intricate than that. Karst landscapes are characterized by soluble rock, primarily limestone, and over time, water erodes this limestone, creating sinkholes, caves, underground rivers, a whole hidden world beneath the surface. Think of it as a kind of Swiss cheese geology, full of holes and passages carved out by water. The Dinaric Alps are a prime example of this, with an intricate network of underground waterways and caverns.
So you have these imposing mountains shaped by ancient geological forces with a hidden network of caves and rivers running beneath them. It's almost like a secret world waiting to be explored.
It truly is, and it's this unique environment that has shaped the region's biodiversity, history, and even its culture. The Dinaric Alps don't just stand apart, they weave through countries, each contributing a distinct flavor to the range.
Let's start with Slovenia. What makes the Dinaric Alps unique in this part of the world?
Well, in Slovenia, the Dinaric Alps are an extension of the Julian Alps with classic karst landscapes, dense forests, and unique plant and animal life. Think hidden valleys and breathtaking gorges. It's also home to the Postojna cave system, a major tourist attraction and a perfect example of the scale and beauty of karst formations.
From Slovenia, the Dinaric Alps run through Croatia. What stands out about the Croatian portion of the mountain range?
Croatia boasts the Velebit mountain range, another stunning part of the Dinarides. This is where you'll find Paklenica National Park, known for its dramatic canyons and challenging hiking trails.
And as we continue south, we reach Bosnia and Herzegovina.
The Dinaric Alps cut right through Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Prenj and Vranica mountain ranges, with their breathtaking vistas, alpine meadows, and serene glacial lakes, dominate the landscape. But these mountains aren't just beautiful. Their rugged terrain has profoundly shaped the region's history, providing natural defense barriers during times of conflict.
It's fascinating how geography can influence the course of history. But these mountains have witnessed more than just conflict, haven't they?
Absolutely. For centuries, the Dinaric Alps offered refuge. During the Ottoman invasions and again during the Yugoslav wars, people sought safety in these mountains, taking advantage of the terrain to resist, to hide, to survive.
The mountains as both a shield and a sanctuary. It adds another layer of complexity to their story. What about Montenegro? How did the Dinaric Alps manifest there?
Montenegro's landscape is dominated by the Dinaric Alps, which include some of the highest peaks in the entire range. The Durmitor Mountain Range, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is located in the north.
A UNESCO World Heritage Site. That's a pretty big deal. What makes Durmitor so special?
Durmitor National Park is renowned for its glacial lakes, often called mountain eyes. These crystal-clear lakes nestled high in the mountains are a sight to behold. Then there's the Tara River Canyon.
I've heard the Tara River Canyon is truly awe-inspiring.
It's one of Europe's deepest canyons, carving through the landscape and offering a glimpse into the raw power of nature. And finally, we reach the southernmost portion of the Dinaric Alps in Albania.
How do the Dinaric Alps compare to the other sections we've discussed?
In Albania, they're known as the Albanian Alps, or Prokleteri, and they culminate in the range's highest peak, Mount Majestic. This area is a haven for adventurous travelers, with dramatic landscapes, steep cliffs, and isolated valleys. Imagine soaring peaks shrouded in mist with the echoes of shepherd songs drifting through the air. It's a place where time seems to stand still.
It sounds like each country offers a unique perspective on these magnificent mountains. But what about the mountains themselves? What defines the physical features of the Dinaric Alps?
The Dinaric Alps are known for their challenging terrain. Steep slopes, deep gorges, and a mix of limestone and dolomite rock formations. Millions of years of geological activity have sculpted these mountains, and their impact is visible everywhere you look. They're truly a sight to behold.
And within those peaks and valleys, what are some of the most notables that we should know about?
Besides majestic, which stands tall at 2,694 meters, there's Dinara on the border of Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Okay.
Dinara is significant because it's the namesake of the entire mountain range. Then there's Bobotov Kuk in Montenegro. Both are popular with climbers.
They must offer some incredible views. The Dinaric Alps sound like a paradise for anyone who loves the outdoors, but they're more than just majestic peaks and rugged terrain, right? We've talked about how the Dinaric Alps have shaped the land and influenced the people who live there, but what about the plants and animals that call these mountains home?
That's what's fascinating about the Dinaric Alps. They're not just visually impressive, they're teeming with life, a testament to their rich biodiversity. Imagine dense forests of beech, fir, and pine interspersed with vibrant alpine meadows bursting with colorful wildflowers.
And some of these wildflowers, as I understand it, are endemic. What does that mean exactly?
It means they're found nowhere else on Earth. These plants have adapted to thrive in the specific conditions of the Dinaric Alps, making them incredibly special. It's a botanist's dream.
It's like stepping back in time into a landscape untouched by the outside world. And what about the animals? What kind of creatures share these mountains with the wildflowers and the pine forests?
Well, you'll find iconic species like brown bears, wolves, and lynxes roaming these mountains. These are animals that have largely disappeared from other parts of Europe, but they still thrive in the Dinaric Alps.
It's hard to believe that animals like that still roam free in Europe.
They do, and it speaks to the importance of the Dinaric Alps as a refuge for wildlife. If you look up, you might spot golden eagles or peregrine falcons soaring through the sky.
It's amazing how these mountains provide a habitat for such a range of species. We've touched upon the Dinaric Alps' role as natural barriers and havens during times of conflict. How else have they shaped the history and culture of the region?
The Dinaric Alps have been a defining feature of the Balkans for centuries. Their imposing presence has shaped migration patterns and fostered distinct cultures within their embrace. They've acted as barriers, creating pockets of isolation where traditions could develop and endure relatively untouched by outside influences.
So they've essentially created isolated communities, each with its own unique traditions and ways of life.
Exactly. The Dinaric Alps provided a sense of isolation and protection, allowing different groups to develop their own traditions, dialects, and even forms of art and music, relatively uninfluenced by outside forces.
That's incredible. And I imagine they also offered something else during times of conflict, something more than just physical protection.
You are absolutely right. Throughout history, various groups sought refuge within the Dinaric Alps, finding solace and protection amidst their rugged terrain. Whether it was during the Ottoman invasions or the more recent Yugoslav wars, the mountains offered a sanctuary, a place to regroup and resist. They provided not just physical safety, but also a sense of hope, a belief that even in the darkest of times, their way of life would endure.
It's amazing how these mountains have witnessed and shaped so much history. But the human connection to the Dinaric Alps goes beyond conflict and refuge, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The lives of those living within the Dinaric Alps have long been intertwined with their natural surroundings. Traditional lifestyles like shepherding, woodcutting, and farming are deeply ingrained in the fabric of their existence, influencing everything from their clothing to their architecture to their folklore.
So their traditions aren't just practices, but a reflection of their relationship with the mountains themselves.
Precisely. The Dinaric Alps are not merely a backdrop to their lives. They are an integral part of their identity, their stories, and their very way of being.
It sounds like the Dinaric Alps hold a treasure trove of cultural heritage. We've talked about the mountains' impact on the surrounding countries and their historical significance. Let's dive deeper into their biodiversity. You mentioned they are one of Europe's most biodiverse regions. Why is that?
The Dinaric Alps are considered a biodiversity hotspot because of the sheer variety of habitats found within a relatively small area. The combination of karst landscapes, dense forests, and high-altitude meadows creates a mosaic of ecosystems. each supporting a unique array of plants and animals.
So it's the diversity of the terrain itself that contributes to the diversity of life.
Exactly. You have species that thrive in the cool, damp conditions of the forest, others adapted to the harsh, rocky terrain of the higher elevations, and still others that depend on the unique conditions found in the region's caves and underground rivers. It's this variety that makes the Dinaric Alps so special from an ecological perspective.
You mentioned earlier the presence of endemic species. Could you tell us a little more about those? I find them to be incredibly fascinating.
Certainly. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Dinaric Alps biodiversity is the presence of those endemic species like the Dinaric cave salamander. These creatures are found nowhere else in the world and highlight the region's evolutionary significance.
A salamander that lives its entire life underground. It sounds like something out of a Jules Verne novel.
It does, doesn't it? But it's a testament to the power of nature to adapt and thrive in even the most unexpected of places. And the Dinaric cave salamander isn't alone. There are countless other species of insects, plants, and even fish that have evolved unique characteristics to survive in the Dinaric Alps.
Speaking of fish, you also mentioned the importance of the region's rivers and lakes. Can you elaborate on that?
The rivers and lakes of the Dinaric Alps are more than just sources of fresh water. They support their own unique ecosystems and are home to various fish species, including trout and grayling, some of which are also endemic to the region.
That makes sense considering the isolated nature of these waterways.
Exactly. The Dinaric Alps rivers and lakes have been relatively untouched by human activity, which has allowed these species to thrive.
So in a way, the Dinaric Alps are like an island of biodiversity in the heart of Europe.
That's a good way to put it. And of course, we can't forget the large carnivores. The Dinaric Alps are one of the few places in Europe where brown bears, wolves, and lynxes still roam relatively freely.
It's reassuring to know that there are still places in Europe where these magnificent creatures can thrive.
It is, but their presence also highlights the importance of conservation efforts in the region. The Dinaric Alps face a number of challenges, including deforestation, habitat fragmentation, and the impacts of climate change. These threats, if left unchecked, could have a devastating impact on the delicate balance of this unique ecosystem.
You're right, those are serious threats. Can you elaborate on how these challenges are impacting the Dinaric Alps?
Logging and infrastructure development, for example, are essential for economic growth, but often come at the cost of habitat loss. This fragmentation is particularly harmful to species that require large territories or have very specific habitat needs. And then there's climate change, a threat that looms over every ecosystem on Earth, but perhaps even more so in sensitive environments like the Dinaric Alps.
Climate change, yeah.
Yes.
What are we seeing in the Dinaric Alps that point to climate change? What should we be concerned about?
Well, we're seeing shifts in precipitation patterns, with some areas experiencing more droughts while others see increased rainfall. This can disrupt the delicate balance of plant and animal life. The higher elevations of the Dinaric Alps are particularly vulnerable. As temperatures rise, we're seeing a shrinking of glaciers and snowpack. This has serious implications for the region's water resources, as meltwater from these sources feeds rivers and streams that are essential for both human communities and wildlife.
And these changes in climate, they're not just abstract concepts, are they? They have real-world consequences for the people and the ecosystems that depend on these mountains.
Absolutely. For example, many rural communities in the Dinaric Alps rely on agriculture, and changes in temperature and rainfall patterns can affect crop yields, leading to economic hardship. There's also a potential for increased conflict over scarce resources.
So climate change is acting as a threat multiplier, exacerbating existing tensions. It's a stark reminder that what happens in the Dinaric Alps doesn't stay in the Dinaric Alps. The impacts are felt far beyond the region itself. What's being done to address these challenges? Are there any conservation efforts underway to protect the Dinaric Alps?
There's a growing recognition that something needs to be done, and a number of initiatives are underway to protect this unique region. National parks and nature reserves like Dermator in Montenegro, Paklenica in Croatia, and Sutjeska in Bosnia and Herzegovina are playing a critical role. These protected areas safeguard the Dinaric Alps' natural heritage by preserving vital habitats and offering opportunities for sustainable tourism.
So these parks aren't just about recreation, they're at the forefront of conservation efforts. What makes them so effective?
Well, they provide a haven for wildlife, allowing species to thrive in protected environments. They also give us a chance to study and learn from these ecosystems, helping us understand how best to protect them. And importantly, these parks can serve as models for sustainable development, demonstrating how we can balance human needs with the needs of the natural world.
It's a holistic approach to conservation. But these parks, as important as they are, can't do it alone. What else is being done to address the larger issues facing the Dinaric Alps? Issues that extend beyond the boundaries of any single park.
You're right. It's a collective effort. There's a growing movement toward cross-border conservation initiatives. Countries are realizing that the challenges facing the Dinaric Alps don't respect political maps. They require collaborative solutions.
That makes perfect sense. These ecosystems don't adhere to political boundaries.
Exactly. Rivers flow across borders, animals migrate, and air pollution doesn't stop at customs checkpoints. So we need cross-border cooperation on things like sustainable land management, responsible tourism, and combating illegal logging and poaching.
So it's about recognizing the interconnectedness of everything within the Dinaric Alps and working together to find solutions. Speaking of tourism, we've talked about the Dinaric Alps as a haven for outdoor enthusiasts. How can we ensure that tourism is managed sustainably to minimize its impact on this fragile environment?
That's a critical question. The Dinaric Alps offer incredible opportunities for adventure tourism, but it needs to be managed responsibly. Sustainable tourism isn't about shutting down access. It's about minimizing our impact and ensuring that future generations can enjoy these mountains.
So what does sustainable tourism look like in the context of the Dinaric Alps?
Well, it means encouraging visitors to explore beyond the most popular destinations, to reduce pressure on those areas. It means promoting eco-friendly accommodations and tour operators committed to responsible practices. And it means educating visitors about the importance of leaving no trace, respecting wildlife, and supporting local communities.
It's about shifting the mindset from one of extraction to one of reciprocity. Take only pictures, leave only footprints, as the saying goes.
That's a good way to put it. And there are some exciting initiatives that embody this sustainable approach. For example, there's the Via Dinarica, a long-distance hiking trail that traverses the entire Dinaric range. It's gaining international recognition and has the potential to boost local economies while showcasing the beauty of the Dinaric Alps responsibly.
I've heard about the Via Dinarica. It sounds like an incredible journey.
It is. The trail is designed to disperse hikers throughout the year, minimizing impact on any one area. It also encourages interaction with local communities, offering opportunities for cultural exchange and economic benefit. It's a great example of how tourism, when done right, can be a force for good.
It sounds like a win-win for both tourism and conservation. As we delve deeper into the Dinaric Alps, I'm curious about the human element. We've talked about the region's rich history and the traditional lifestyles of its people. How have those traditions been impacted by the modern world?
That's an important aspect to consider. The Dinaric Alps, for much of their history, were defined by their isolation, which, as we've discussed, fostered unique traditions and a strong connection to the land. But in our increasingly interconnected world, maintaining those traditions while facing modernization presents challenges and opportunities.
It's that constant tension between preserving the past and adapting to the present.
Exactly. On the one hand, we're seeing young people leaving rural communities in the Dinaric Alps in search of opportunities in urban areas. This can lead to a decline in traditional practices as younger generations move away from their ancestral homes.
A familiar story in many mountain communities around the world.
It is. But it's not all bleak. There's also a growing awareness of the value of cultural heritage and a desire to preserve it. People are starting to realize that these traditions are part of what makes the Dinaric Alps so special. We're seeing efforts to revitalize traditional crafts and skills, often through tourism. This provides much-needed income while keeping cultural heritage alive.
So it's about finding ways to make these traditions relevant and sustainable in the 21st century.
Exactly. It's about bridging the gap between the past and the present while ensuring that the unique cultural heritage of the Dinaric Alps continues to thrive for generations to come. For example, there's a growing movement to promote local food and agricultural products connecting traditional practices with contemporary tastes.
It's about celebrating the connection between the land, the people, and their heritage. The Dinaric Alps aren't just a place. They're a living tapestry, woven together by centuries of tradition, adaptation, and resilience. As we've explored the Dinaric Alps, we've uncovered a region of remarkable diversity, haven't we? From towering peaks and deep canyons to rich biodiversity and enduring cultural traditions, these mountains have shaped the lives and landscapes of the Balkans for millennia. But we've also discussed the fact that the Dinaric Alps are facing new challenges in the 21st century, challenges that threaten the very essence of what makes this region so unique. What do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities facing the Dinaric Alps in the years to come? What will determine whether this region thrives or merely survives?
The Dinaric Alps, like many mountain regions around the world, are at a crossroads. They face pressures from globalization, climate change, and the desire to balance economic development with environmental protection. Perhaps the biggest challenge is finding that balance, finding ways to benefit people while safeguarding the environment that sustains them. We've talked about logging, infrastructure development, and even tourism. These activities, while essential for economic growth, can have a significant impact on the Dinaric Alps' fragile ecosystems. Finding sustainable solutions that work for both people and the environment, that's the challenge.
It's a balancing act that every mountain community in the world is grappling with.
It is, and we can't ignore the issue of depopulation. As younger generations leave rural communities in search of opportunity, how do we maintain traditional practices? How do we ensure the long-term sustainability of these mountain communities? Perhaps promoting ecotourism or finding new markets for traditional products could provide incentives for young people to stay or return.
It's about creating opportunities that are rooted in the unique character of the Dinaric Alps. Opportunities that respect the traditions of the past while embracing the possibilities of the future.
Exactly. And then there's the looming threat of climate change. The Dinaric Alps, as we've discussed, are already experiencing its effects. Adapting to these changes and mitigating their impact will require a collective effort.
What would that look like? What needs to happen to ensure the Dinaric Alps are still here for future generations?
It starts with acknowledging the scale of the challenge and the interconnectedness of the issues. Sustainable forestry practices are crucial, ensuring that logging is done responsibly with an eye towards long-term forest health. Restoring ecosystems that have already been degraded is another priority.
We can't just protect what's pristine. We also have to heal the wounds of the past.
Precisely. And of course, we need to transition away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy sources. This will require investment in new technologies and infrastructure, but the long-term benefits for the Dinaric Alps and for the planet as a whole are immeasurable.
It's a monumental task, but it's not impossible.
It's not. The Dinaric Alps have overcome challenges before. They've been shaped and reshaped by geological upheavals, climatic shifts, and human endeavors. They've been a place of refuge and a source of inspiration. They've seen empires rise and fall, and yet they endure.
Throughout their history, they've demonstrated an incredible resilience, a capacity for adaptation and renewal. And it's that resilience that gives me hope for the future.
As do I, because within these challenges, there are also immense opportunities. The Dinaric Alps have the potential to become a model for sustainable development, a beacon of hope, demonstrating that it is possible to balance economic growth, environmental stewardship, and cultural preservation.
What would that look like in reality?
Yeah.
Paint a picture of that future for us.
Imagine a future where the Dinaric Alps are renowned not just for their breathtaking beauty, but also for their thriving local economies, a well-managed and sustainable tourism industry, and a deep commitment to conservation. Imagine communities empowered to manage their own resources, their traditions honored, and their ways of life in harmony with the natural world.
It's a vision of hope, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, a better future is possible.
It's a future where the Dinaric Alps aren't just preserved, they're celebrated. They become a shining example of what we can achieve when we prioritize the well-being of both people and the planet.
It's a future worth striving for. As we conclude our deep dive into the Dinaric Alps, I'm filled with a sense of awe and responsibility. Awe at the scale and grandeur of these mountains, their intricate ecosystems, and their enduring cultural heritage. And responsibility for their future, a future that's inextricably linked to our own. What will be our legacy? What choices will we make to ensure that the Dinaric Alps continue to inspire awe and wonder for generations to come?
Those are questions we must all ask ourselves, because the fate of the Dinaric Alps rests not just with those who live within their shadows, but with all of us. These mountains are a shared inheritance, a global treasure, and it is our collective responsibility to ensure that they thrive now and in the future.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.